Welcome to Mind, America's Lignite Energy Podcast, brought to you by the Lignite Energy Council of North Dakota. Here's your hosts, Kate Muggerud and Geoff Simon.
Here we go, off to season 2. Welcome back. For all of our listeners and now our viewers, we are jumping into season 2 of Mind, Lignite Energy in America. Doing a little different this season. Video is now going to hopefully be incorporated into this podcast, so we're excited about that. You guys, I have a really exciting topic that we're going to dive into today, but first I want to introduce a couple people that have a lot of interesting things to talk about, and most of it might be over my head, but that's what I'm here for. So first I'd like to introduce Geoff Simon. Geoff is the executive director with Western Dakota Energy Association. Geoff is going to join me as my co-host here, and Geoff, if you want to just say hi and just talk a little bit about your background, what you do.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've been with the Western Dakota Energy Association about 3.5 years now. Previously worked as a utility sector lobbyist, and before that, I was in the regulatory business. I worked for the Public Utilities Commission in South Dakota in a former life. But Western Dakota Energy Association used to be called the Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties. We changed it because we also represent other energy interests, including the Coal Conversion Counties Association, which is among our members. So coal and the lignite industry are a big priority for our association, WDEA.
Awesome. Cool. And Geoff's going to be joining me this season, so you guys will get used to seeing his mug on these podcasts here. And today we also have with us Kari, who is the Vice President of the North Dakota Petroleum Council. Kari, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy to have you on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kate and Geoff, for having me.
Awesome. So, I know that you guys know, and our listeners who, thank you guys for following our podcast. A little bit about our podcast for some of our new listeners and now our new viewers. Basically, we are partnering with the Lignite Energy Council, and I dive into topics within the energy industry that may not make a whole lot of sense to me, that I want to learn more about. And so the Lignite Energy Council was gracious enough to sponsor this podcast and, kind of take this idea and run with it. And so we are here and kind of learning more about all things energy in our great country. So very, very excited to have you, Kari and Geoff. Kari, talk to me a little bit about what is your job, North Dakota Petroleum Council. That's a big title, Vice President. What's a day-to-day for you, Kari?
A day-to-day is some regulatory work, a lot of membership work. We're also now running a safety training portion of our organization called One Basin, One Way. So the one thing I can say is my days are full of a lot of variety of doing what I can to support our industry and our membership. And it's very exciting. And I have a coffee cup in my office that says "boring doesn't live here," and that is that is very, very true on a day-to-day basis. I never know exactly what I'm walking into. As you know, as you tried to schedule this time with me, it's been interesting, particularly right now with COVID-19 and its impact on our nation and our nation's economy.
Yeah, isn't that true? That's something too I want to mention to our listeners and that are out there right now. This is a time that we are just kind of pivoting and learning to see kind of how we can quarantine together and continue this process of work. So it's been interesting. How have things been at the Petroleum Council with the quarantine?
Well, it's interesting. I think that we are all experiencing a technology shift that's going to have a major impact on the future, and the Petroleum Council is no exception. We're using Zoom meetings and team meetings. Everything is working electronically. We haven't lost our ability to do what you're doing here today, have a conversation while being able to see the other people on the line and see their body language. And so we've just used a lot of technology to accomplish that. And I haven't been in the office now for 6 weeks. So have completely learned how to do my job from afar.
Right. Yeah, it's just wild. What about you, Geoff? Have you guys been kind of doing the same thing too?
Well, my office is housed with the Association of Counties, and the Association of Counties have all been working from home, but I've been going to the office actually most days to a largely empty building. Otherwise, if I'm at home, I'm distracted by my dogs, and I get a lot more work done in an empty office than I would at home, I think.
That's a quiet, empty office. Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Awesome. Okay, well, kind of some of the things, Kari, I know that we wanted to talk about. We'll dive right in. So you have an energy background. So what has your career and where, kind of talk to me a little bit how you got started within this industry?
Well, interesting story of being at the right place at the right time. That's all I can say. Next week on the 17th will mark the end of 36 years for me in energy in North Dakota. And I was fortunate enough when I was a senior in college at UND, you know, everybody surrounding me was thinking, what are we going to do? It was early 80s. Where are we going to go? I never expected to stay in North Dakota. I certainly never expected to come back to my hometown, which is Beulah, North Dakota, in Mercer County. But at that time, the Dakota Gasification, which at that point was Great Plains Gasification Associates, was recruiting from the colleges, and I was recruited to come to work at the Great Plains Gasification Associates plant 4 days after I graduated from college with a degree in biology and chemistry. I started working for them as a chemist, and I spent 20 years in the state-of-the-art lab there, and then moved, it was, you know, just back to my hometown, was able to be close to my parents for all of those years, raise my kids in Beulah. You know, it was kind of the first wave. We talk about the oil and gas industry providing opportunities for our children and grandchildren to be employed in the industry here in North Dakota, to stay close at home and close to family and raise their kids in North Dakota. And we see that as a real advantage. But the coal boom that was going on at that time was kind of the first wave of young people being able to stay in the state, and I was one of those fortunate ones. So I spent 27 years with Basin Electric family before I moved on to the North Dakota Petroleum Council. So, and now I've been there for, it'll be 9 years here shortly. So great career, great North Dakota.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. So biology and chemistry. So that your background is so diverse in kind of what you've dug into.
Yeah, it started out very, very technical, obviously, and I still that technical aspect of things. From there, I did, you know, years ago when my career started, I had always wanted to get more education, and yet in Western North Dakota the opportunities were very limited. You either had to drive to Bismarck, or you had to drive to Minot, or drive to Dickinson to take classes. And so I waited a long time to get further education, and when it was possible to get an MBA online, essentially from Minot State, I was able to do that. And currently I'm working on a PhD in organizational leadership through Liberty University. So education is kind of a big thing that I like to promote with young people, and the opportunities that being able to work on your education from anywhere, you know, kind of like we're doing with this COVID-19 situation.
Right, and how important that is too. Well, very cool. So when we talk in terms of the Bakken, you know, that's something, what do you feel from your perspective that's kind of meant to Western North Dakota communities? Specifically, you know, you're from Beulah. So what kind of impact does the Bakken have in these communities?
Well, and I think that's where my experience of growing up in a really small town of Beulah that really had nothing going for it and was literally
Yeah.
dying on the vine. And when the coal industry came in and created a boom, and I saw firsthand how Beulah Hazen area got a hospital and clinics and doctors and built new schools. So I had a very positive viewpoint of what industry coming into Western North Dakota could mean to those communities. And I came on board with the Petroleum Council just in time to see that, to see what it meant to those communities to have more doctors, more clinics, better school systems, to be able to really expand, to think about building a fitness center like they have in Williston, or the school in Watford City, along with the Rough Rider Event Center. I mean, that is just phenomenal, the things that have been able to be accomplished by those communities with the tax base that they now have due to oil and gas. And the young families that move into the town and bring new life, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. That's so true. I was able to look at some of those new locations that they put together, and they're just, I mean, they're beautiful. They're, just being from North Dakota and growing up North Dakota and going to these small towns for different, sporting events or anything like that. You never would think, I never thought in my lifetime I'd see some of these beautiful architecture and buildings within these smaller communities. So that's been really cool to see that growth.
Absolutely. And the restaurants and the downtown communities just coming alive. It's a big thrill.
Yeah, definitely. So jumping back now, talk to me a little bit about what the North Dakota Petroleum Council, what's their role really? If you had to sum up what their position is, talk to me about that.
Well, we are a trade association for the oil and gas industry in North Dakota, and so we do a lot of government relations as kind of our primary focus. The Petroleum Council has been the voice of the oil and gas industry in North Dakota since 1952. So it's an association that's been around a long, long time. Besides the government relations piece that Ron Ness, the president, is really focused on, we also have a lot of focus on federal regulatory activities and how to advocate for the industry on responsible regulation that actually has an impact, a benefit for the environment, rather than just a lot of regulation in place. And, so we've worked on that for a long time. Also, we host a lot of activities for our members. We try to have business development opportunities for them. We host the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference every other year here in Bismarck.
And hey, quick question. Is that, so what's the plans for the Williston Basin Conference? I go every year and I enjoy it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that opportunity. We have moved the conference from its traditional time frame, the third week in May, to September 1st through 3rd.
Okay, great.
So we are hoping that given the summer warm air and sunshine, that we're going to have a reprieve from COVID-19 at least through that conference time. And we've sold out our booths that we're going to make available, since we've had to space them out a little bit more for social distancing. And we're planning a very COVID compliant conference.
That's a term I think all of us are now familiar with.
Kari, I got a quick question, just a kind of a follow-up on what you talked about there with the council's mission. I think one of the coolest things you've started is the foundation, and one of the coolest projects you have is really trying to capture the history of North oil production. It's kind of starting to be lost, but that project I think it's really a neat thing.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Geoff. I agree. When we talk about the Petroleum Council's roles and efforts, it's such a laundry list that sometimes we forget all of the details. But you're right. We have we've been very blessed by having Tessa Sandstrom on our staff for many years, and Tessa's a phenomenal writer. She loves to write. She loves to research, and we determined about 1.5 years ago that our board leadership wanted to see the history of North Dakota oil and gas written, and Tessa was the perfect choice there. So, and the foundation was a perfect organization to house that history and to fund that history. And we have also been given a grant by the North Dakota Oil and Gas Research Council to have Tessa work on that. And it's a 3-year project. She's halfway through it. I've seen some of her work, and they're in little video vignette interviews of some of the the scions that started the oil and gas industry in North Dakota, and now is the time to capture, especially some of those older folks who had such a phenomenal impact on that industry in our state.
That's really cool. What's the name of that the program?
So Geoff asked about the history of North Dakota that's being written, but our foundation is the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. So not really a different name from the Petroleum Council, but in a foundation, it's a 501c3, so we're able to do a lot of programs that essentially our members can give money to the foundation, and then we can spend that money in ways that benefit the communities and the people of North Dakota. Another program that is very big from the foundation is called Planting for the Future, and it's a tree planting program. We found that some of our members who were pipeline companies had stipulations from the Public Service Commission that for every 1 tree that they disturbed in building a pipeline, they had to plant 2. However, a lot of the landowners that had multiple pipelines on their land really didn't want any more trees because they wanted to be able to use their land for their agricultural purposes. And so in order to meet that requirement, the foundation created Planting for the Future. And I think as of this year, 2020, we will have planted, I believe it's over 200,000 trees in North Dakota for landowners who want them.
Wow.
They can sign up for the program and determine how many hundreds of trees they want to have planted. And we have staff and volunteers that come out and do that work. So it's a great program.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, absolutely. Giving back and taking care of our state there. That's pretty cool. So now, just because of, my bias with Lignite, now how do you feel Lignite has complemented the oil and gas industry?
Well, I think in a number of ways. One of the things I'm proud of as a North Dakotan is that North Dakota has an all of the above energy policy, and the oil and gas industry supports the lignite energy and supports all other forms of energy, and try to find the right mix for that effort. And Geoff could talk more about the Empower Commission and its work, but I think that is a very good way of supporting each other. And I think, when we heard in our office about Coal Creek now declaring that they're going to close in 2022, we were very, very sad. I mean, we've been great supporters of Lignite Energy. And of course, with my background, having spent 27 years in that industry, it's very close to my heart. And I see it as jobs and, again, opportunity and community support, and it's going to be hard on all of Western North Dakota. And so I think if there's anything that all of us as North Dakota Energy can do to find another buyer perhaps, or somehow support that facility continuing on into the future, then that's what we should do. And that's just a small portion. I mean, I think that we can talk about enhanced oil recovery and how necessary it's going to be to have that lignite energy connection in the future. And I think the two industries have worked very hard together to create innovative technology that benefits everybody.
Project Tundra is really an exciting project, I think, Kari, because, the possibility of capturing carbon dioxide and then using it for enhanced oil recovery. I can see a future for, coal and the oil and gas industry, well into the next century, really, honestly, because, we're only at best recovering 10% of the oil that's underground in the shale formations. But with CO2, we get a whole lot more out of it. I've heard, in the Canadian oil fields where they've been using this around Weyburn, they're capturing up to 50% of the crude that's underground. So
wow,
but the two together, the synergy, I think, represents a very, very long and prosperous future for North Dakota's oil sector, oil and gas and coal sectors, the energy sector.
Well said, Geoff. It's very exciting. And the one thing I've learned through all these years is that when there's a will, there's a way, right? We're going to figure out how to crack that nut to use CO2 or other gases for enhanced oil recovery in a shale play, which is difficult. And yet with the Environmental and Energy Research Center in Grand Forks and the two industries working together, I feel positive that we're going to get that technology figured out, and we'll be the first in the nation again. North Dakota will lead. That's the vision I see.
Yeah, that was something I had some really great guests on for the first season, talking about Project Tundra and some of that, that technology that we are developing right now. And it's really cool. And it just definitely made me feel proud to be, a North Dakotan, and just with what we're doing in the eyes of the nation are really on us from an energy perspective, seeing kind of what we're doing and how it's working. And, we're working with other states to help them do the same. So I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. I think North Dakota Energy, the Lignite Energy and the oil and gas working together. We have brought a lot of technology to the whole nation and to the globe.
Yeah.
Been a leader, and in the last decade, North Dakota really is not that spot on the map that nobody knows about anymore. They've heard about it, and they see our state leading. It's great.
Yeah, I know we have. I feel like we have a global perspective now from a couple different. They were taking some of this technology and giving presentations on it over in Australia, and so it was kind of neat to hear about those things and those stories, just because we're getting our name out there. So I love hearing that. But so that's a good point, Geoff, when you talk about that. So how do you feel that the lignite industry and the oil and gas industry kind of go hand in hand with those researchers at the Energy and Environmental Research Center to kind of commercialize that CO2 for enhanced oil recovery?
Are you asking me or Kari?
Oh, Geoff, sorry, Geoff. I'll let you take the lead on that one.
Well, I think one of the ways that the oil and gas sector works very well with the coal industry is these lignite plants. I mean, they're base load generation. They operate 24/7. And basically that's kind of the way the oil sector works. All the pumps and compressors and things like that are associated with oil gathering and moving crude oil and natural gas through pipelines, it's 24/7 as well. So they, in that sense, they complement one another quite well. The CO2 is just, it's another one of those prospects down the road that I think it's really, there are really some exciting opportunities. There's a CO2 project getting underway in Bowman County right now.
Oh, really?
Denbury Resources is planning to build a pipeline this summer. They'll start putting CO2 in the ground, and then kind of, some of these legacy fields in Bowman County, they're not really part of the Bakken, but, you let the CO2 soak, and, they expect to recover an additional 30 million barrels there. So there's just enormous potential for, CO2 from lignite plants to be used in the oil and gas sector. And Kari, you've got this unique background. You really kind of started out in lignite and, with DGC and the coal gasification plant, but then worked over to the oil and gas sector. So, they have complemented one another throughout history, really.
Absolutely. Back in 1990, Dakota Gasification started pumping CO2 on a 200-mile plus pipeline into the Weyburn field in Saskatchewan for enhanced oil recovery. So you think about that. That's 30 years ago that was started, and North Dakota and Basin Electric have been able to say that we had the first carbon sequestration project commercially marketable carbon sequestration project in the United States. So right here in North Dakota.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that another way that oil and gas and lignite work well together is just, as Geoff mentioned, base load. A lot of the demand growth in North Dakota has come from the oil and gas industry in Western North Dakota. And so that is, required the lignite energy industry to expand, to provide more peaking plants, to take up some of the capacity of their base load. And so working hand in hand have maintained a demand that might not have been there on those electrical generating stations.
One thing too about that demand is projected to continue to grow as well. We saw a study actually conducted through the North Dakota Transmission Authority that, it's not apparent right now with so many wells shut down because of the drop in demand with the pandemic. But, the industry was projected to see an increased demand for another 1,000 megawatts of generation over the course of the next 10 years as the industry continues to grow. And, Kari, I certainly expect there will be a rebound, that crude oil demand will return once we get this virus behind us. But the industry is going to have some challenges for the next couple of years. I don't know if you want to talk about where you see it headed 6 months from now, if we can get this virus behind us.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, we have to look at the whole situation that occurred when COVID-19 essentially led to our governments and the CDC to asking people to stay home, to quarantine. You simply had absolute demand collapse for petroleum products. I mean, nobody's flying, nobody's driving, and that hit the industry, like a slamming door. Without demand, you can't run refineries at full capacity. If you can't run refineries at full capacity, you fill up storage of crude oil and petroleum products. And when that storage is full, what are you going to do? You have to start reducing production. And so we've never seen a demand collapse like this. And of course, the situation with the OPEC countries, Saudi Arabia, and then also OPEC plus Russia, and their shenanigans on increasing their production and collapsing price even further, certainly didn't help. But, if you think of that and you understand what all has occurred with the demand collapse, when you look at 6 months down the road, I mean, people, even last week, Mother's Day is a good example. If you went out to restaurants in Western North Dakota, there were plenty of people out and about. So people are starting to drive. Maybe they won't be flying as much, although I was looking for some flights for my son and his family for the middle of the summer. So hopefully demand will start to creep up, but we certainly don't see that demand is going to come back immediately. And until you have increased demand, refineries again can't be pushing through, going to 100% of their capacity. Storage will have to be used up, and until we get back to a situation. So I know Ron has said on many times that this is probably, a 9 to 12 month scenario before we start to see things, demand to increase and production to come back online. That said, I think there's going to be some incentives for oil and gas industry to bring some of these wells online by the end of the year. And that will certainly help North Dakota tax revenues and incomes. And this is important to our whole economy, not only in the United States, but not only North Dakota, but the whole United States. And of course, there's a global component there too. So hard on everybody.
Yeah, we're definitely having to learn how to kind of pivot in this environment. Just from even all businesses are experiencing that too. So it's again, you hear this repeatedly on commercials. These are unprecedented times. These are, that's nothing more true. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how. But one thing that has remained consistent, within this industry is how we have weathered some really tough storms and come out on top and been better than ever. So that's kind of exciting to look forward to.
Absolutely. And we do see the future being bright for oil and gas and lignite in North Dakota. It's just, we'll see what it looks like at the other side of this. But
Yeah.
well,
Geoff, what are your thoughts on that? Kind of what's your perspective on where we'll be in the next, year from now?
I don't know the pace of the recovery. I mean, obviously, we're gonna get this behind us at some point. But when I think about North Dakota and the role of its energy sector, national security really comes to mind. The president has talked about energy dominance and lessening our dependence on foreign sources. That obviously came to light with with this virus that originated in China. That we were dependent on China for supplies. So medical supplies in particular. So I think it sort of dramatizes the importance of being able to produce our own energy supply here as well. Both oil and gas and lignite, coal-fired electricity. We play here in North Dakota an important part in securing our nation's national security.
Well, and I see, just like you were starting to say there, Geoff, that national security is going to lead our government and our citizens to change some behavior of wanting to be reliant on other countries, not only for their medical supplies, but also for their energy. And we may see that we see a shift in even less imports of petroleum products from other parts of the world. I don't think that the shenanigans that Russia and Saudi Arabia played in all of this is going to help them in the long run. So
yeah, that's so true. It definitely will be interesting to see when do you feel that the industry will kind of see the biggest impact? Is it right now? Do you feel like it'll be in 6 months from now, or when do you feel that we'll really see that hit?
Well, our projections are that we haven't yet found the bottom. That it will be a couple of months yet. We're seeing pretty significant layoffs of particularly well services companies, and they're always the hardest hit sector of our industry, and we really feel for them. But we the oil price is still, it bounced up a bit, and hopefully maybe it'll stay at around that $30. We think getting to 30 is going to be fairly easy, but really getting back up to 50, 60 is going to be tough. And it's going to take that demand, as I talked about, to increase. That's kind of going to be the driver, right? So as we all feel more comfortable to getting back to normal and going on vacation this summer, maybe we're going to drive more than fly, but that's going to have a huge impact on our whole economy in the U.S.
Yeah, that's definitely so true. Well, Kari, now if our listeners want to learn more about any of the things that we've talked about, specifically if they want to learn more about the North Dakota Petroleum Council, where can they go to do that?
Well, we have a website. It's called ndoil.org. And certainly a lot of information on that website. And there's also another website, energyofnorthdakota.com.org. Both, I think, will take you to the same location where it talks about some of our foundation efforts. And I appreciate Geoff bringing that up. There's a lot going on there, and people can participate in a lot of our activities. We've had to cancel some of our summer activities coming up, but generally we have community barbecues, and I know that we're continuing to do Pick Up the Patch, where our member companies go out and pick up trash in the ditches around North Dakota. And
oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, beautify it as it's needed every spring.
Yeah. Awesome. And Geoff, for our listeners too, just as your first time on the show here, where can our listeners kind of learn more about what you're doing and what's happening in your world?
Well, the website of the Western Dakota Energy Association is ndenergy.org. And, I didn't mention it from the outset. We obviously work very closely with the Petroleum Council. Our association represents the interests of the communities that are impacted by energy development. So all the communities in the oil and gas producing counties and the coal producing counties, including the cities, counties, and the school districts. That's the interest that we focus on. But you can find out more about what we do at nbenergy.org.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys both for being on the show. I appreciate it, and definitely, appreciate the Zoom call that we are on here at our homes, quarantining together. It's a new world that we are in right now, but it's more exciting, that's for sure.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Mind, America's Lignite Energy Podcast. For more information on lignite energy in North Dakota, visit lignite.com.